entertained? Are you not entertained?
If you haven't thought about Rome yet today, you are about to check off that box because we are talking about one of the most badass movies that ever came out in theaters, certainly in my lifetime. Yes, I am talking about Gladiator. Why was it so amazing? It was just a perfect storm. Russell Crowe was on an absolute heater. He had starred in a bunch of great movies before and was going to go on and star in a bunch of really good movies right after. Ridley Scott was top of his game. Joaquin Phoenix bursting on the scene. Richard Harris as Marcus Aurelius. Come on, what else do you want? I'm George from MovieWeb, and we're not just talking about Gladiator today. We're talking about the much anticipated sequel, Gladiator 2. People in town have been talking about making a Gladiator 2 since Gladiator 1 came out. But there's been all kinds of crazy ideas. There was even a script Nick Cave wrote that Russell Crowe was pretty excited about that was metal as F, and it was all about how Gladiator is in hell and ends up having to kill God and becomes immortal and lives forever and fights in World War II. And yes, sign me up for that movie. But that's not the movie we got. Instead, we're getting something 24 years later that is connecting all the dots. And if we unpack what's going on in Gladiator 2, not just from a historical accuracy standpoint, but from a cinematic legacy standpoint, we get a real good look at perhaps what's wrong in Hollywood today. The thing about Gladiator 2 is it does try to capture some of the same historical accuracies, and you gotta be impressed with how they bent over backwards and did all these gymnastics to make this work. After all, they looked at the facts. A certain number of years after Marcus Aurelius and Commodus came along these two co-emperors, Gracchus and Geta, I think I'm pronouncing that right, who were not the best emperors, and things were continuing to go downhill for Rome. But once again, we're introduced to a character who has a destiny to help try and preserve the dream of what a Roman Republic of free Rome could actually be, and this comes in the guise of this new character, Lucius. Spoiler alert, he happens to be Maximus's son. We don't need to get into that, but it does complicate things because trying to connect all these dots from one movie to the next to create the bloodline, the lineage, the threads that make it all work and have all these stars coexist, it's a lot of weight for a movie to carry while also just trying to be good. But let's set that aside for a second. Let's talk about the genre itself. The sword and sandal epic is fascinating. It has been around since the very beginning. They've been making Ben-Hur movies since the silent era, and they've made so many, I can't even keep track of them. I don't even know how many there are. I think there was one even recently, maybe yesterday for all I know. They're probably making one now. Either way, the Ben-Hur movie most people think about is the Charlton Heston one. Yes, that Charlton Heston from Planet of the Apes. The other sword and sandal epic that really was instrumental in defining the genre was Spartacus. Spartacus was a Stanley Kubrick movie. It starred Kirk Douglas. He was also on a run at that time. He also produced it. It was written by blacklisted author and writer Dalton Trumbo. We could do a whole other thing about that, but we'll leave it aside for now. And he was coming off another sword and sandal epic with co-star Tony Curtis, The Vikings. This is what Hollywood used to do. It used to see something that worked, like The Vikings, and say, hey, let's do that again. Not a sequel, let's do it again, but a little bit different. Well, let's flash forward to Russell Crowe and Gladiator in 2000. In a lot of ways, this movie was like, hey, Braveheart was a hit, let's do it again, but let's do it a little bit different. And they did, and in some ways, they built on the concept. Just like Braveheart was honestly building on the concept of the first Spartacus. And all that is to say that if you do it that way, sometimes things work a little bit better because you're not tied to any specific lore. You might be tied to a historical period, but all these movies play fast and loose with that. Let's talk about Gladiator 2 again.
You will be my instrument.
Yes, there is Macrinus, the Denzel Washington character. That was a real guy, as crazy as it seems. So again, a lot of these pieces that fit, you've got to find and work, and William Wallace was real, and Braveheart, and Spartacus was real, and the point is, Gladiator 2 exposes a bit of an issue in Hollywood's system. See, we are so sequel happy, and I'm not saying sequels are bad. Sometimes they're amazing. Watch my Penguin video. I think IP is incredible. I have Star Wars toys all around me. I think sometimes a good franchise keeps making good movies. Let's not talk about Star Wars though in that regard. That is definitely a whole other thing. The point is that when you keep going to the same lore and you have to continue it and extend it and rewrite it and hook all the pieces in, you create a lot of problems. And I think that's part of what's weighing Gladiator 2 down. What they could have done instead is just gone the old Hollywood route. Let's talk about another actor who's a lot like Russell Crowe. Errol Flynn, who is a New Zealand actor who came to Hollywood, burst on the scene with Captain Blood, and they thought, what else can we do with this guy? This worked. Well, let's make Robin Hood. We've made that a bunch of times. Oh, that worked. Let's make Robin Hood in a boat. That's called the Seahawk. That worked. Let's make Robin Hood in the West. That's called Dodge City. That worked. And it kept going. And that was Errol Flynn's career. And the movies kept working. Because instead of trying to make a sequel like Robin Hood 2, which might have worked, I don't know, they just said, let's take the same guy, let's take some of the same bad guys, the same actors who played them, let's take some of the same sidekick actors, let's take the same basic plot, let's take the same leading lady, and let's put it all in a new setting and make it a little different, and yeah, audiences loved it. So what I'm saying is maybe with a movie like Gladiator, you don't need to go exactly to a sequel with the same lineage and some of the same characters. I mean, after all, did we really need all that work to get Derek Jacobi back in there? I love the guy, but it just didn't fit. There's so many ways that Gladiator 2 had to work harder to get results, where it could have just been like, we know Gladiator works, why don't we make something similar, but a little different, which is exactly why the first Gladiator worked in the first place.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius.
Now, it's easy for me to say, sitting in my office, surrounded by movie books and Roman history. It's a lot harder to do. So I'm not out here saying I have all the answers. All I'm saying is, when you watch Gladiator 2 and you're trying to figure out, were sharks really in the Colosseum? Probably not. Did people read newspapers at the coffee table in the cafes? Probably not. Was there a guy named Macrinus who actually forced his way to the top? Yeah, there actually was. There's so many weird things going on. There's so much work that goes into pulling all of that off and making a good movie that you don't really need to add these extra pieces of like, does it have to be the guy's son? Does it have to be his mom? Do they have to be fighting the same battle? That stuff complicates things. We could go back to Rome in so many ways, in so many eras. It is jam-packed with incredible stories. If you don't trust me, just pick up any piece of literature on Roman history. There is so much, and it is so cinematic, and it could all make a great movie. So if you're looking for things to be inspired by, dig into the past, there's tons. But if you're looking for great movies, we've done sword and sandal epics for as long as we've been putting stuff on film, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. There's also a lot of disasters. You don't need to look far. Cleopatra, perhaps one of the biggest cinematic disasters of all time. Sword and sandal epic. This is a fun genre because the stakes always feel high, and this movie absolutely made it harder to succeed than it needs to be. Because let's be honest, even without any of this stuff going on, it's really hard to make a really good movie, especially at this scale. If you like this video, please subscribe, click like, leave a comment, let us know what you think. Hang around for more. I'll be continuing to do analysis and insights into all the big releases and all the big shows. If you don't like this video, I still want you to subscribe because I want to hear from you. I want to know why I'm wrong. I want you to tell me that I'm wrong about everything, and then we can get into it and discuss it. Because that's the fun of all this, right? Thanks for watching.